What if Nedd Stark demanded a trial by combat? The finale. Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Jon Snow regards his half-brother, still hardly believing the things he's hearing as Robb delivers fresh supplies to the Night's Watch.
You know your queen has gotten quite friendly with the free folk here. She visits them regularly, and they seem to enjoy your company. I wouldn't be surprised if their raidings ceased because of her presence. That, and her dragons.
It seems like it. Though I suppose getting rid of the Weeper and Rattleshirt also helped.
Aye. Most of the free folk are happy to be rid of them. And that false king who tried to stir them up, was he a Targaryen?
He claimed he was. But Lady Melisandre is claiming he was a false dragon. From House Blackfyre. I didn't realize there were any left. Still, he raised maybe 600 wildlings. Your queen raised 6,000. Given enough time, she would become a powerful queen.
Assuming that we survive the winter. The trouble here has not ceased. There are greater and greater reports of White Walker activity. But the rangers I've sent out can't figure out what they're up to.
We are ready, Jon. Or as ready as we'll ever be. Thank you for your help.
As the last of the weapons are handed over to the Night's Watch, Robb and Jon clasp hands and go their separate ways. As they ride out of Castle Black, Robb finds Daenerys in the Gift, where she is visiting some of the wildling villages. The area had begun to thrive since the end of the war, and she wishes to see how well they are doing. When she sees Robb approaching, the two share a nod, and Daenerys bids them farewell. The two of them have spent their time getting to know each other and preparing themselves for marriage. While the two of them have grown rather fond of each other, they don't feel that spark. The two don't ever become more than friends. It doesn't help that Daenerys prefers to spend her time in the Gift than in Winterfell or even Dragonstone. After spending a better part of a year in the Dothraki Sea, the Dragon Queen was left with a love of the outdoors. This has naturally left her gravitating towards the wildlings who share her disposition. In reality, both of them are secretly grateful, as it keeps the free folk in line while Robb rules the Northmen, preparing for the long night. The air inside Craster's keep is thick with the stench of sweat, ale, and roasting meat. The mutineers feast like kings. Carl Tanner sits at the head of the table, watching his men indulge in their spoils. Caster's food, Caster's mead, and Caster's wives. One of the women inches closer to the fire, whispering to another.
The cold is coming. Caster kept them away. He gave them gifts.
Enough of that fucking old shit. Ain't no ghosts coming for us. No more kneeling to dead men and ice demons. No more taking orders from Joe or a fucking Mormont. Caster's dead, and you belong to us now. If you forget that, I'll throw you lot out of the cold as an offering.
The women exchange uneasy glances, but say nothing more. Then the wind shifts. A chill slithers through the hall, so sharp and sudden that the fires dim. The laughter fades as even the men begin to shiver, pulling their cloaks tighter. Outside, the trees creak, carrying voices that do not belong to the living. A shadow moves beyond the splintered doorway, too fast, too smooth. A scream. The deserters scramble to their feet, knocking over chairs and drawing stolen blades. From the icy must, the figures step forward, pale as death and eyes that burn with frozen fire. The White Walkers. As they march, icy blades form in their hands. The first mutineer to move is thrown back against the wall, his blade spinning from his hand. Another swings wildly at the closest White Walker, only to watch his steel blade shatter like glass. Carl Tanner picks up Craster's crossbow and fires at the nearest White Walker. The quarrel punches right through his chest, and for a moment it seems like the creature will fall. Instead, it simply rips out the bolt and drops it to the ground. He pulls out his dirks and readies himself, but the cold becomes unbearable as frost creeps up the walls. They surround him, their blades shining in the moonlight. But then, they stop. A new shape emerges from the darkness, taller than the rest, clad in jagged armor of black ice. The Night King steps forward. His gaze sweeps the room, the burning blue of his eyes fixing on Carl. The creature opens his mouth, and a sound like cracking ice emerges. The deserter drops his knives to cover his ears. To his surprise, the Night King does not run him through. Instead, it cocks his head and looks at him. Confusion, perhaps a hint of annoyance. He raises one hand. The ice at his feet twists and cracks, raising like veins across the ground. The frost spreads in deliberate patterns, forming symbols and curling shapes. Then, with a flick of his finger, he drags his hand across the ice, etching an image into the frozen floor. A cave. Slowly, he raises his gaze back to them and points a finger toward them, and then at the cave. He taps the pommel of his sword. The message is clear. Find this cave, or die. The wind howls through the keep once more just as the White Walkers disappear the way they came. Bran sits cross-legged beneath the ancient roots of the weirwood, eyes closed, lost in the endless sea of memories pouring into him. The three-eyed raven's voice echoes in his mind, guiding him through the visions. Ages past, kings at war, the first men and the children of the forest. He sees his family in the past and in the times that could have been. Visions of stories, ones told at other times, fill his mind. He sees Arya seated in the Dreadfort with the Flayed Man banner flapping behind her. Robb in the Red Keep, accompanied by a brawny woman in the colors of the Baratheons. Sansa pushing King Joffrey off the walls of Maegor's Holdfast, and Jon seated atop the Iron Throne. Yet he is hailed by the name Jaehaerys. These stories and more fill his mind. It is nearly done. Soon he will know everything. The cave is quiet, but for the whispers of the trees and the fluttering of ravens above. The children of the forest move about, watching over the ritual, their sharp eyes scanning the tunnels. Others patrol outside the cave in search of any threat. Mira and Jojen stand close by, Jojen's face pale with exhaustion. Summer rests near the entrance, ears twitching. Then the birds grow restless. The ravens brought in by cold hands begin to take flight, their craws echoing the sky, turning into a storm of black. But soon they begin to descend into the forest, pecking at unseen foes. The children whisper to one another, their hands tightening on their obsidian blades. A few raise bows or heft spears, but Leaf tells them not to worry. The land is protected by the three-eyed raven.
The wards will hold.
A sharp, unnatural crack splits the air. A crossbow bolt shoots out and hits one of the archers, sending him tumbling down. And then the figures begin to emerge, heavy cloaks pulled over their faces and holding black steel in their hands. Then more appear. 10, maybe 12, but something is wrong. They move with surprising discipline and liveliness. Leaf's eyes widen as she watches them, while Summer jumps to his feet and growls.
They are not dead.
Summer snarls and leaps. The battle erupts in an instant. The children hurl stones and arrows, blunting the attack, but only for a moment. The Night's Watch deserters rush forward, firing crossbows while those with shields raise them above their heads. One slams a child against the cave wall, breaking her fragile form like a doll. Another cuts through their defenders, laughing as he twirls a pair of knives. Summer drags one down, ripping at his throat. The others press forward. The defenders fight valiantly. 3, 4, then 5 of the invaders fall. But it is not enough. 4 make it through. Leaf curses and rushes through another entrance, rushing to the chamber of the three-eyed raven.
We're under attack. Bran, run!
She hears footsteps behind her, and those 4 attackers come rushing in. The lead warrior shoves her aside as they run past her. However, she picks up her dragonglass knife and stabs the nearest deserter in the leg. The man screams and doubles over, letting her finish him off. Mira takes Bran's hand and shoves him to Hodor as she picks up her spears and keeps them back. Jojen tries to follow, stumbling across the roots as the remaining children of the forest rush at them. The three-eyed raven watches, unmoving. He has seen this moment before.
I have taught you all I can. What happens next is up to you.
Bran feels the last of the old man's knowledge pouring into him as the final attacker's blade pierces the raven's chest. The old seer exhales, long and slow, his body crumbling into dust. But his mind, his essence, it is in Bran now. Bran stumbles, his head pounding as Hodor grabs him and runs. Summer follows, growling, his fur streaked with blood. The remaining children fall behind, lost to the darkness. As they escape, something shifts. The cave trembles, the glow fades. The ancient power that has shielded this place for thousands of years dies with the last of the children. The first of the attackers falls upon Jojen. The Crannogman reaches for a knife, but he is too slow, too weak. The deserter drives his short sword through his ribs before he can react, and he crumples without a sound.
No!
Mira launches herself at the nearest attacker. She fights fiercely, her spear flashing, cutting deep and taking a man down. But they are stronger, faster. A blade catches her side, then another. She falters and collapses beside her brother. Bran tries to move, tries to reach out, but Carl Tanner is already there. He is the only one of the group to have made it, but as he approaches, he twirls his blades in his hands. The man, who was once a brother of the Night's Watch, sneers down at him, blood spattered across his armor.
Fancy little lord sitting in his cave, thinking he's safe.
Bran does not think. He reaches out, wargs into Hodor. The great beast of a man lurches forward, his eyes rolling white. Hodor slams into Carl, grabbing him by the throat, and he hurls the man against the cave wall. Carl's skull cracks, and he goes still. Far away, at the wall, the great spells woven into the ice flicker like candlelight. And then, they begin to fade. The Night King watches all of this from atop a nearby ridge. The faintest flicker of amusement crosses his lips as he sends in the whites. This time, there is no magic stopping them as they come stumbling out of the trees. As Hodor stumbles out, carrying Bran in his basket, he sees the nearest whites just a few feet away. But before it can reach him, the ravens come falling upon them. Their beaks peck at the rotting flesh, biting into eyes and legs, tearing the whites as they stand. Another figure bursts out atop a horse. He carries a torch in one hand and a sword in the other as the ravens search for other foes.
Get on. We must return to the wall right away.
Hodor takes his hand and hurriedly scrambles atop the steed as Cold Hands turns southward and rides off, his ravens buying them time. But it is not enough. The dead's numbers are endless, and the ravens begin to fall. Bran glances back and sees them starting to close in. He takes a deep breath and closes his eyes. Suddenly, a direwolf leaps out from the darkness and tears at the nearest white. Summer rips its throat out, but he barely has time to savor the kill before bounding off. Behind him, more direwolves appear along with bears, shadowcats, squirrels, elks, and even a mammoth. All the nearest creatures that Bran can call upon, he summons. They rush at the dead, throwing them off their feet, but this is only a temporary success. The dead are not at all intimidated, and instead begin to wipe them out. Bran wargs out as the creatures begin to fall and collapses on Hodor's back. A deep tremor runs through the ancient ice of the wall, sending men staggering. The frozen ramparts crack, great shards of ice tumbling to the ground. Wooden barricades splinter, watchtowers groan under the strain. A few men cry out, clutching their weapons as the ground beneath them shudders.
What was that?
The tremors come again, stronger this time. A great ear-splitting crack echoes through the air as one of the smaller towers collapses, sending a cascade of ice and rubble tumbling into the courtyard below. Men scatter, cursing and shouting as they rush to stabilize the defenses. Then the wind shifts. A low growl rumbles through the air. Drogon lifts his head from where he rests near the gate, his nostrils flaring, his great wings unfurl, eyes burning like molten gold as he sniffs the air. Before Daenerys can call back to him, the black dragon launches skyward, wings snapping open. He soars high above the wall, a shadow against the pale sky, higher than he ever has before. Jon, Daenerys, and Mance rush to the edge of the wall, their eyes following the dragon's flight, flying over the wall. In her years there, Drogon had always stubbornly refused to approach the wall, but now he has. Something has changed. A sentry calls out, seeing figures approaching the wall. 3 figures, one cloaked in black, another slumped over a horse, and a third on his back. Bran Stark has returned. Mance is the first to react. He orders the gate open as him and a dozen guards rush out to face them. Among them is Jon. His eyes widen as he takes in the tall figure beside Bran, the strange, half-dead man who guides the boy forward. His breath catches. Benjen Stark.
What?
Mance nods towards Cold Hands, a grim certainty settling over his face. Jon takes a closer look, and his eyes widen.
Uncle Benjen. Sorry it took so long for me to get back, boy. We'll explain later. In the meantime, we need to get your brother to shelter.
The gates are thrown open, and they rush back inside, Jon cradling Bran as they lay him down. They give them some food and drink, and eventually the boy begins to stir.
We have to prepare. The dead are coming.
Daenerys does not hesitate. She turns to Drogon, who lands heavily beside her and climbs onto his back, riding south to summon the free folk. Mance goes with her, telling everyone who can fight to go with them, and those who don't to fall back to the north. Meanwhile, Jon begins sending ravens to Robb and Nedd, while he hastily repairs whatever defenses he can. The wall's ancient magic is gone, and the dead know it. A cold wind howls through the darkness. The first whites appear, climbing the ice like monstrous spiders, their frozen fingers digging into the cracks. Their eyes burn blue, hollow, and unnatural. The archers hurry to take aim at them, trying to shoot them down. However, as they unleash their first volley, the skies darken. Undead birds swoop from above. Crows, ravens, eagles, and buzzards. They swoop down, dragging men off the parapet or raking their claws against them, some dropping stones or undead animals like snakes or dogs. The gates thunder as whites tear and claw at it. The gates buckle under their weight as men try to reinforce it. With all of this going on, the Night's Watch can barely focus on the whites climbing the wall. These are soon joined by ice spiders, scuttling up the wall with their long legs clawing into the frozen surface. White walkers ride atop them, their weapons gleaming with frost. Bran closes his eyes and reaches out. From the forests, the living answer his call. Great packs of wolves charge from the tree line. Snowy owls and hawks dive at the undead birds. Goats and bears and elks and uroks come charging out from the rear. Reinforcements from the free folk help stabilize the situation. On the wall, Jon and Benjen fight side by side, cutting down whites as they scale the defenses. The former white moves like a shadow, his blade slicing through the dead with eerie precision. Above, Daenerys circles, her dragons raining fire down upon the enemy. She directs their fury, keeping them away from the wall itself. If the ice weakens too much, it could collapse entirely. As the first spiders reach the top, Mance comes rushing in alongside Tormund and Ygritte, hurling javelins at its exposed stomach and sends it screaming off the ledge. His warriors come, armed with bundles of wax that they tie together and set alight before hurling them down towards the whites. The extra weight helps knock the whites off the wall, and the fire ensures they fall. They even manage to kill some of the spiders that way. The assault on the wall fails, and even their birds are driven off. Slowly, reinforcements arrive. At first, it's a trickle. Small bands of men-at-arms, banners whipping in the wind as they crest the hills beyond the wall. Then their numbers swell. Thousands pour in, swords and axes glinting in the dying light. The banners of the north, House Stark, Umber, Karstark, Mormont, snap in the cold wind as they charge into the battle. Hope flickers in the heart of the defenders. The gates open and they charge out. Steel clashes against rotting flesh as the Northmen wade into the fray, hacking down whites with brutal efficiency before retreating back inside. They reinforce men in the walls, providing their longbows and putting them to good use. The whites falter, momentarily pushed back. The line holds, for now. But then, the giants come. Massive, rotting forms lumber out of the darkness, their once mighty bodies reduced to frozen horrors. Undead mammoths follow, their tusks stained with ice and blood. They slam into the gates like living battering rams as the last of the Northmen retreat inside. The archers rain arrows down on them, but anything less than a killing blow is simply wasting arrows as they feel no pain and the fire barely licks at them. Wood splinters, metal bends, and with a final earth-shaking crash, the gates collapse. The dead pour into Castle Black. The battle spills into the courtyard, a desperate, brutal melee. Defenders hack and stab, but the whites feel no pain. Like the giants, only fire or a killing blow stops them. The giants are even more terrifying. They can absorb entire charges while mammoths break their lines. Men fall, screaming as the dead drag them down. Mance Rayder and Cold Hands hold the inner defenses, rallying the last of the Night's Watch and wildlings. But it's clear, they are losing. The two veteran rangers stand back to back, their blades flashing amidst the chaos and hacking down whites with brutal efficiency. Around them, their men fall or retreat.
I never thought I'd die with a white.
Funny, I could say the same thing about you, wildling. What about a friend, though?
Aye, a friend.
More whites climb the stairs, swarming the upper levels. The wall is lost.
We can't hold them. Sound the retreat.
The horn blows, echoing through the night. Men flee, some covering the escape while others run for their lives. Mance knows what this means. The gift, the land south of the wall, are completely exposed. All his people. Though he sounded the evacuation order, the wildlings will have a difficult time fleeing. There is only one option left. A desperate strike at the Night King himself. Mance gathers his most trusted warriors and rallies them to his side as the White Walkers begin to cross the gate. Viserion and Rhaegal dive, their flames engulfing the Night King. Fire consumes him, an inferno of dragon flame hotter than anything else in the world. Around him, the whites instantly collapse, and Mance orders a charge. But when the flames fade, he still stands, unaffected. At that moment, the wildlings clash with the White Walkers. Even with the fire, they still let out a chilling presence that freezes some of the warriors in their tracks. Others remain standing and toss them aside, leaving them vulnerable. Mance manages to make his way through the first line and reaches the Night King. He lets out a furious cry, hacking his sword at him, trying to give him no room to react. And yet somehow the Night King predicts all these strikes. His sword comes up and blocks each attack. Cursing, he swings it at the undead creature's head, but the Night King ducks under the blow and drives his spear through his chest. Mance gasps, blood freezing on his lips as he falls lifeless to the snow. Daenerys screams, her dragons roaring in fury. Before they can strike again, whites are hurling spears at them, while some of the giants hurl boulders or massive arrows. Some manage to penetrate their hides, sending them tumbling across the air. Viserion screeches, his wing pierced, spiraling to the ground. Daenerys loses control. Bran takes hold of the dragons. His eyes glow white as he reaches into their minds, forcing them to break away. Viserion fights his way free, flames raining down to cover their retreat. Rhaegal follows after, and Daenerys urges Drogon to retreat. The Night King watches them go, unmoving. Then the retreat begins in earnest. The armies flee south, rushing through the abandoned villages of the Gift, gathering whoever they can. But the undead do not stop. Giant spiders and monstrous direwolves of ice run down the stragglers. Men scream as they are torn apart, their bodies rising moments later, turned against their own. Daenerys puts her dragons working on overtime, burning through the whites that get too close. Without having to worry about the wall, she unleashes their full fury on them, buying them precious time to escape. It works for a while, but it does not last forever. They retreat so swiftly they manage to catch up with a large band of wildlings and small folk retreating from their castles. Some lords urge them to continue going, but if they do, it will mean abandoning these people. She refuses to go any further and urges them to stand and fight. Jon, Cold Hands, and Robb gather the last of the Northmen and Free Folk and prepare for their final stand. Then, the horn blows again. A new army rides into battle. Stannis Baratheon leads the charge, his men crashing into the undead ranks with fire and steel. Flaming catapults light up the night. The banners of the Stag and Direwolf fly side by side. At Stannis' side, Nedd Stark rides into battle. Snow and ice howl through the battlefield, mixed with flaming swords, dragon fire, and dragon glass. They have surprise and armor, allowing them to gain momentum to push into the undead horde. This slows them, but does not stop them. Stannis stands at the head, Lightbringer cutting down whites even without the fire. The Northmen, bolstered by the Knights of the Vale, reform their lines under Robb Stark's leadership. Meanwhile, Nedd gathers the cavalry for a second charge. Daenerys flies overhead, her 3 dragons raining fire on the dead. Yet no matter how hot the flames burn, the Night King does not fall. He stands at the heart of the battlefield, watching with those piercing ice-blue eyes. Nedd Stark sees him first. He does not hesitate. Sword in hand, he cuts his way through the whites, his warriors following. The wolves of House Stark fight at his side, Greywind, Ghost, and even Bran warging into the beasts to direct their attacks. Daenerys and Drogon swoop low, unleashing a final torrent of dragonfire. The flames consume the Night King and those around him, turning the battlefield into a sea of orange and gold. The cold wind blows, and the flames die. The Night King still stands untouched. He raises his hand. The dead rise again. The bodies of the fallen warriors, men who only moments ago fought beside their friends, turn. Eyes glowing blue, they lunge at the living. Stannis is dragged down, his flaming sword flickering as whites swarm over him. He's only saved by Jon and Cold Hands, who rush to his side. Robb shouts for the Northmen to help the riverfolk on the right flank. Jon Snow and Cold Hands struggle to reach Nedd and Daenerys as the Night King moves. His sword appears in his hand, and he advances towards Nedd. Nedd meets him, longsword in hand, knowing that dragonglass might be the only thing that can end this. He shoves him back and tries to slash at him, but that icy blade catches his attack. The shockwave from the impact sends men flying. The Night King swings again, and Nedd barely blocks. Each strike sends cold searing through his bones, and frost begins to creep along the blade. Daenerys sees her chance. She leaps off Drogon, landing hard but running forward. As Nedd blocks another blow, Daenerys plunges a dragonglass dagger into the Night King's back. The blade shatters rather than bury itself into his back. However, the injury is non-fatal thanks to his armor. The Night King turns, icy blue eyes locking onto Daenerys. With inhuman speed, he grabs her by the shoulder. and presses his sword against her, letting the ice take over. Bran watches through the eyes of his ravens, switching bodies, entering Summer, who bounds towards him. The direwolf sinks his teeth into his leg, biting hard, though it barely phases the Night King. But it does take his attention away. Nedd Stark leaps after him and drives his sword through his chest. The Night King lets out a soundless scream, and then he explodes into shards of ice. As he falls, so do the thousands upon thousands of whites. The living all look at one another, wondering if the fight is truly over. Stannis hobbles over to Ned's side and offers him a nod.
It seems that saving that dragon girl was indeed the right call. Well done.
With this done, the rebuilding can begin. By now, the North is simply not to have to deal with the White Walkers. The free folk eagerly settle to their new homes, but a few long for the far north, wishing to at least maintain ties there. With the wall now obsolete, the Night's Watch shift their focus on resettling the lands beyond the wall. To this, Daenerys takes the lead. After this battle, she is crowned Queen of the Free Folk and leads the force to recolonize this area, centered around Hardhome. To everyone's surprise, she opts to call off her marriage with Robb Stark. Rather than be upset, though, most of the lords are happy to accept this, as they've come to accept Daenerys as part of the Seven Kingdoms. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.